Frank just stared, the cigar smoke curling around his ancient face like a shroud. He didn't say much, but his eyes, those flinty chips of granite, told me everything I needed to know. Blood and loyalty were the only currency in this part of town. And I was about to find out how much my family debt was worth. "Rocco's looking for you," he rasped, his voice like gravel on a tin roof. "He's got a score to settle, and he ain't sending flowers. It's a private game. High stakes. A backroom poker game where a trigger man will be playing. Only the chosen few get a seat at that table." The problem? A backroom poker game. My gut tightened. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about getting close to the snake before it struck. "How'd I get in?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Frank gave me a look that said I was dumber than I looked. "You don't. Not like this. Everyone there knows everyone. Or at least, they know who you are. And no one's going to be wearing name tags in an 8-man game. A hitman doesn't like it when his target is onto him. That'd likely force his hand, faster, harder." He was right. I couldn't just walk in there, a marked man with a reputation. The moment I showed my face, the game would be over, and I'd be looking at a one-way ticket to the morgue. A disguise? Maybe. But those things only work in the movies. And this was real. Too real. The dead end. The old man just watched me, the smoke from his cigar a silent judgment. He dealt me a new hand, and it was a handful of jokers and a whole lot of trouble. The kind of trouble that could get a man killed before he even knew he was playing. The stakes were too high. Too high. The silence in Frank's dusty living room was heavier than a tombstone. Every plan I tried to form crashed against the wall of Frank's logic. I was a dead man walking, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I left Frank's lower than a slug with no other moves to make. The door to Frank's brownstone shut behind me with a tired sigh, and I stepped back onto the cracked pavement of Old Town. The street was a grim tunnel. The kind where the shadows stretched long and the only thing blowing was yesterday's trash. Frank had dealt me a new hand, but it was a hand full of trouble, and the target on my back felt heavier than ever. The weight of the game. Rocco's game. A high-stakes affair. A backroom poker game where a hitman would be playing. Frank wouldn't give up the name, but he guaranteed the trigger man would be at the table. That left me with a problem: how to get in without getting myself killed. No one was wearing name tags, and a marked man walking into a den of wolves was just asking for a bullet. I pulled out my little black contacts book, its leather cover worn smooth from years of use. Pages filled with names, numbers, and the ghosts of old favors. I thumbed through them, each face a flicker of a memory, each name a possibility, then a dead end. Too hot. Too cold. Too much of a rat. Too much of a saint. The kind of high-stakes play I was walking into needed a very specific kind of player. A diamond in the rough. Then I saw it. A name that always made me crack a cynical smile: Jamie Dimond. The irony wasn't lost on me. A name so corny, so perfectly noir, for a guy who actually made his fortune gambling. Cards, dice, roulette. Didn't matter. Jamie had a talent. He could beat them all. Jamie started off like me. Poor. Scrappy. But he promised himself if he ever made it big, he'd spread it around, thick. And he did. He gambles, sure, but he's not a cheat. He's one of the most honest people I know. And we're tight. Real tight. I helped him out once, back when the mob wanted to cut off his talented hands for catching their cheat in a game they rigged. Jamie spun it around, walked away with a 20 grand pot. And the mob walked away with a bloody nose and a new respect for the little guy. Diamond was it. He was the only one I could trust with this kind of high-stakes gamble. My feet carried me without thought, past the boarded-up storefronts and the flickering streetlights, until I found myself in front of a grimy sign that simply read, Joe's Place. A dive, but the kind of place that had a payphone in the back. I pushed through the swinging door. Time to make a call. The bell above the door of Joe's Place was missing. Probably pried off by a drunk looking for spare change. The air inside was a thick soup of stale beer, cheap perfume, and desperation. A few lonely souls hunched over their drinks at the bar, their faces lit by the glow of a flickering neon sign that advertised a brand of whiskey nobody drank anymore. This was a dive, my kind of place. A call in the dark. I scanned the room, ignoring the stares, and found it in the back corner. A payphone, its chrome dull, its receiver smelling of 1,000 whispered secrets. I dropped a dime in the slot, the clink echoing in the quiet gloom. My fingers punched Jamie Diamond's number, a rhythm I knew by heart. He picked up on the second ring, his voice sharp, alert. Diamond here. It's Jack, I said, my voice low. I got a problem. The kind with high stakes. A pause. Jamie knew my code. He knew when I called, it wasn't for a friendly chat. I gave him the rundown, quick and dirty. Rocco Racini. The hit. The backroom poker game. The unnamed trigger man who'd be at the table. Frank just dealt me a new hand, I finished, and I need someone to play it for me. The Diamond's edge. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Jamie was a gambler, but he wasn't reckless. He weighed the odds, always. So, you want me to sit in for a marked man in a game where the house is looking to collect on a different kind of debt? He said, a hint of amusement in his tone. Sounds like my kind of high stakes. It is, I confirmed. No one knows your face. You're clean, and you're the best damn card shark I know. You have to show 5 grand cash just to get in the door, I said, and I'll stake that. And what's my cut? He asked, ever the businessman. Everything, I said, without hesitation. And your life, if this thing goes sideways. He chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. Always the charmer. I'm in. But we're going to need a setup. He gave me a time and a place, a back alley meet that only he and I would know. I hung up the phone, the receiver cold against my ear. Jamie was in. The first piece of the puzzle was in place. Now, for a setup. Jack Hammer strikes a deal, setting the stage for a high-stakes card game and a new chapter in the ongoing noir saga. The meeting at High Rollers. I met Jamie Diamond at the High Rollers Club, a private sanctum for the city's elite. The air, thick with the faint scent of cigar smoke and expensive perfume, hummed with the singing jingle of chrome one-arm bandits. It was the perfect scene for a setup. Safe. Members only. No prying eyes or riffraff. Jamie and I exchanged pleasantries. The kind of meaningless words you offer when you're sizing someone up. We settled into a quiet booth, away from the glittering noise and the casual eyes of the other patrons. It was here, in the secluded comfort of the club, that I laid out Uncle Frank's new hand. A messenger had delivered the intel moments before. A discreet little envelope that now felt like a lead weight in my pocket. The game was an inside job. A high-stakes card game in a warehouse on the bad side of town, where the windows all had bars. The door was a steel plate with no markings, and the key to getting in was a secret knock. The rhythm to shave and a haircut, 2 bits. And a password. The password is, "I'm looking for Jack," I told him, watching his face for any sign of a tell. But Jamie Dimon doesn't melt. He's cold as ice, a man carved from a block of the stuff. He simply took a slow sip of his whiskey, the ice cubes clinking softly against the glass. There wasn't even a flicker in his eyes. "The deal stands," he said, his voice as flat as the tabletop. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. The kind of statement that didn't need a response. I leaned forward, dropping my own voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The rules are simple. $5,000 to sit at the table. I'll spot that. Winner takes all. You don't walk away till you're broke or dead, and any sign of a cheat, you're dead." A low, humorless chuckle rumbled in Jamie's chest. $5,000? You think I'm a rookie? He slid his glass around the condensation on the table. "I only need $1,000. I'll make the rest up in the first hour." He met my gaze with a glint in his eye. "But I wouldn't insult you by taking less." I held his gaze, a wry smile touching my lips. "That's why you're my guy. You're sharp. I've seen you. You can tell me the order of every card dealt in a 6-man turn of blackjack. You don't have a photographic eye. You've got a photographic mind. Names, dates, details. You're a trap. If there's a whiff of a clue to be found, you'll sniff it out. And you'll remember." I couldn't do better myself. Jamie's smile widened just enough to be a smirk, and he took another sip of his whiskey. "That's why you came to me. The one-man war room." "I've already cased the joint," I said, a little colder this time. "The game's in a 3-story building. Which would be a problem if it weren't for the 4-story Fleabag Hotel right across the street. I've rented a room on the top floor that gives me a perfect, unobstructed shot of that steel door. It's a one-man war room in there. Cameras, telescopic lenses, the whole shebang. If I can get some good photos, maybe we can get a lead on who's running this thing. My eyes on the street, your mind on the table. It's the perfect setup." Jamie leaned back, a genuine, if brief, smile on his face. "With all that equipment, maybe a camera isn't the only thing you should be shooting from that room." I looked down, a wry smile of my own on my face, shaking my head. If only it were that easy. If only. The arrival. It was 2 a.m., the night before the game. A beat-up cab coughed me out in the alley behind the Fleabag Hotel. The streets were empty, but my eyes scanned the shadows. My one large trunk felt heavy as I climbed the dim, grimy back stairway. My keys jingled as I unlocked the door. I nudged the trunk inside, then hung the "Do Not Disturb" sign, locking the door tight. The curtains were drawn. I flipped the light switch and the single bulb flickered to a jaundiced glow. I scanned the room. A single bed, an uncomfortable-looking chair, a small side table, and a tiny bath. I walked into the bathroom, cracked the hot water on slightly, stepped back into the room, set my trunk on the bed, and opened it. Tools of the trade. Inside, nestled amongst layers of foam, were my tools of the trade. My 2 cameras, both as finely crafted as a Rolex and just as expensive. One held a wide lens that could capture an entire city block. The other a telephoto lens sharp enough to lift fingerprints off the grimy steel door across the street. There were 10 tins of 50-shot film, each roll $100 gamble, and half a dozen filters. Filters to let light in, filters to keep light out, and filters to keep prying eyes from catching reflections. 2 tripods, their necks twisting into knots, lay beside them. Settling in, a coffee cup and a jar of instant lay ready. I went back to check the hot water. It was good. I returned to my supplies, some ready-to-eat rations, 2 packs of smokes, and a pint of bourbon. Yeah, I had to be on the ball tomorrow, but tonight, I was getting a little shut-eye. I set up my equipment, sat in the uncomfortable chair facing the door, sipped my bourbon, and drifted into a dreamy half-sleep. Thinking of Jamie, my mind drifted from the room and my own meticulous prep to Jamie. I imagined him, getting ready for the game the only way he knew how. By laying his cards down and cleaning out the house. He was the kind of guy who didn't need cameras and lenses. He had a photographic mind of his own. And he'd figure his odds the instant the cards hit the table. That's why we made a good team. I handled the grunt work, and he handled the finesse. The watch is running backwards. The restless night and bourbon kept me in bed until 9. That was a blessing. I got out of bed and splashed some water on my face. The morning stubble would have to stay there for now. I gave my equipment the once-over. Out the window, the 6 a.m. morning rumble of work traffic that had kept me falling in and out of sleep had slowed to a crawl. I went back to the rusty sink tap and made a mug of Joe. The water was hot. Real hot. 2 blessings today, I thought. Could be my lucky day. I had a few more cups of mud and made breakfast out of the sweet rolls I had packed. The hours seemed to have ground to a halt. I played a little solitaire with the deck I had packed. 2 o'clock crawled by. Then 3. The room next door had a radio. I could hear it just fine through the paper-thin walls. 4 o'clock sauntered by. Jesus, I thought. The watch is running backward. At 5 o'clock, the tire growl in the street was back up to a full roar. And I began testing, focusing, setting, fine-tuning, making sure everything was perfect. It had to be. Keeping busy started the clock moving again. 10 p.m. is game time. I'll be ready. What about you, Jamie Diamond?
Jamie Diamond's Gambit. The knock. I'm Jamie Diamond, and this game is mine. The street was a grimy canyon of brick and shadow. The cold bit at my neck. The address Jack gave me was just a number on a steel plate door. No windows, no buzzer, just a faint, metallic groan from inside. I raised my fist and knocked the specific rhythm Jack had drilled into me. A sharp tap 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 tap, a pause, then a faster tap tap. The sliding peephole opened, and a pair of yellowed, cold eyes peered out. "What's the word?" a voice growled. "I'm looking for Jack," I said, my voice low and steady. The eyes narrowed, then a bolt slid back. The door swung inward, revealing a mountain of a man who just grunted and gestured me inside with a thumb the size of a sausage. The gathering. I stepped through the door, and the world changed. The smell hit me first. Stale whiskey, cheap cigars, and the sharp, coppery tang of greed. The air was a thick, gray soup of smoke, hanging over a heavy oak table in the center of the room. A single, low-hanging lamp cast long, dancing shadows, making the men look less like men and more like vultures circling a kill. I took my seat at the table. The chair groaned under my weight, and the mountain of a man who'd let me in slid into a seat on my left. Around the table sat 7 men, their faces like bad poker hands, all secrets and ugly tells. The clatter of chips, the rustle of cards. It all seemed to happen in slow motion, a deadly ballet of greed and deception. Reading the tells. As I looked at the men around the table, my mind began to drink in their characters, to soak up their very existence, like a rag in a barmaid's hand soaks up beer from a dive bar on a Saturday night. I gave each man a category and a number. What else would you expect from a card sharp? The guy on my right, number 8, a slick-haired weasel who keeps running his thumb over a gold pinky ring. He's a poser. He likes to play the part of a slickster, but he's about as slick as sandpaper. Number 5, the man across from me. His bloodshot eyes and twitch tell me his category is in a bottle. Number 4, 3 up on my left. His category is just old. He can barely lift his glass, let alone choke someone out with a piano wire. Number 6, he's shaking from the game. He doesn't play it. It plays him. His category is loser. Number 2, on my left. Nope. He's a sharp like me. That leaves 3 and 7. Me at 6. The bald rat who smells of death at 9. And the one with dark curly hair at 3. They sit directly across from each other, and their stench is as thick as wallpaper paste. While I'd bet the bald rat at 9 was the most dangerous man in the room, he wasn't my real concern. The dark curly-haired number 3 squinted his eyes like a man who just lost his wallet on payday the moment I came in. Part panic, part dread, part anger. His eyeballs rattled around in their sockets like 2 sloppy pool shots trying to make their way down the same pocket. I'd been watching him closely, calculating the amount of time I had until that moment of recognition of who or what he was searching for exploded across his face. And that moment was in 5, 4, 3, 2. I sprang the moment his recollection spread blood-red anger across his face. A roar tore from his throat. Jack Hammer. I saw you with Jack Hammer. I slammed my hands down, flipping the heavy oak table. Cards and chips flew. The mountain on my left roared, but the chaos had bought me a fraction of a second. The thuggish brute and the bald rat were on their feet. I was already on my feet, and I had one thought, one focus: get out. The escape. I scrambled past my overturned chair. The shouts of the other players lost in the clamor of scattering chips and crashing furniture. I put my shoulder into a wooden door that led into a narrow, dark hallway. Thank God for my mental mapping, my mind replaying the layout of the backroom I'd observed upon entering. I took the steps 2 at a time, spilling out onto the cold, unforgiving sidewalk. Behind me, I heard the lumbering oxen begin to thunder down the steps. Like a gazelle, I was on my feet and bolted to hunker down behind a cargo van. I peered around the corner of the van, heart hammering against my ribs, and saw Jack coming across the street. The 2 hulks from the poker room, the mountain and the bald rat, thundered into the street. My mouth opened, a shout tearing from my lungs before I even thought about it. Jack, look out.